The data packet arrived during third shift when most of the Galactic Empire's intelligence division was running on skeleton crew. Officer Tellman had been reviewing routine surveillance reports for 6 hours straight, his four eyes glazing over at the endless stream of mundane information from 1,000 different worlds. Then his terminal chimed with an alert that made his skin ridge rise in alarm. Someone had broken encryption on a Level 7 classified channel. Tellman pulled up the file, expecting another false alarm from some rookie analyst who had miscoded their security clearance. Instead, he found himself staring at technical schematics that made absolutely no sense. The blueprints showed a warship design, clearly human in origin based on the crude labeling and measurement systems. But the specifications were wrong, not just ambitious or optimistic. Fundamentally impossible according to every physical law. The Empire had codified over 50,000 years of spacefaring civilization. He ran the file through authentication protocols 3 times. Each scan confirmed the same result. The blueprints were genuine. They had come from inside human construction facilities on their orbital platforms above the third planet they called Earth. Tellman had studied the humans for 2 cycles now, ever since they had stumbled into faster-than-light travel barely 3 generations ago. They were interesting in the way a newly hatched creature might be interesting. Clumsy, loud, and prone to making dramatic mistakes, but they learned quickly. He had to admit that much. This was different. Tellman forwarded the file to High Commander Vranes with a priority flag. Then he sat back and waited for the inevitable response. It came faster than he expected. His communicator buzzed with a direct summons to the central command sphere. When a high commander wanted to see you immediately, you moved. Vranes was waiting in his tactical chamber when Tellman arrived. The commander's ceremonial armor gleamed under the soft overhead lights, each plate inscribed with honors from 100 campaigns. Vranes had been leading Empire fleets since before humans had discovered fire. He radiated the calm confidence of someone who had seen everything the galaxy could throw at him. "Explain this file to me," Vranes said without preamble. The holographic display between them showed the human warship blueprint rotating slowly in 3 dimensions. Tellman stepped forward, activating his analysis overlay. The design appears to use reactive armor plating, not the standard type we employ on our heavy cruisers. Something new. The material composition suggests it can adapt to different weapon frequencies in real time. "Impossible," Vranes said flatly. "Materials do not work that way. You cannot make metal think." "I agree, Commander, yet the specifications are quite detailed. The humans appear to have developed some form of programmable matter at the molecular level. Look here." Tellman highlighted a section of the hull. The armor is not a single piece. It is millions of interconnected segments, each capable of independent structural adjustment. Vranes leaned closer to the display, his expression skeptical. "What else?" "The power system violates standard engineering doctrine. There is no central reactor core. Instead, they have distributed the power generation across 200 smaller units throughout the ship. Any single unit can be destroyed without crippling the vessel." "Inefficient," Vranes muttered. "Redundancy like that would require triple the maintenance staff." "The humans appear unconcerned with efficiency as we define it. I have been monitoring their development for some time. They have a saying, if something is foolish but accomplishes the goal, then it is not actually foolish." Tellman pulled up additional files. "Their entire engineering philosophy runs counter to our established practices. Where we seek perfection and standardization, they embrace variation and adaptability." Vranes walked around the holographic display, studying the ship from every angle. "How confident are you in this intelligence?" 97% confidence, Commander. The source is reliable. We have assets embedded in their commercial shipping networks. They see everything moving through human space." "Have they built this vessel yet?" "Unknown. The blueprints are recent, dated within the last lunar cycle according to human timekeeping. If construction has begun, it would be at one of their orbital facilities. Vranes was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that Tellman recognized as concern. "Summon Dr. Kelly's. I want our best materials scientists to review these specifications. If the humans have actually discovered something we missed in 50 millennia, I need to know about it." "Yes, Commander. Should I alert the Council?" "Not yet. First we verify. Then we determine what this means." Vranes deactivated the hologram with a gesture. "The humans are children playing with tools they barely understand. They have no military tradition worth mentioning, no strategic doctrine, no understanding of how wars are actually fought in space. But, Commander, but children sometimes discover things that adults overlook because we assume we already know all the answers." Vranes moved to the observation window overlooking the vast expanse of the Imperial home fleet. Thousands of ships hung in perfect formation, each one identical to its neighbor. Precision, order, the hallmarks of Imperial supremacy. Prepare reconnaissance assets. I want eyes on every human construction facility within their territory. If they are building this ship, I want to know the moment it takes shape. "It shall be done, Commander." Tellman turned to leave, but Vranes stopped him with a final question. "In your assessment, officer, are the humans a threat to the Empire?" Tellman considered his words carefully. "They should not be, Commander. By every metric we use to measure military capability, they are insignificant. But they keep doing things they should not be able to do. They solve problems in ways that make no logical sense, yet somehow achieve results. I cannot classify them as a threat using our standard parameters because they do not fit our standard parameters." Vranes nodded slowly. "That may be the most honest assessment I have heard in a century." Dismissed. As Tellman left the chamber, he could not shake the feeling that something fundamental was about to change. The Empire had stood unchallenged for longer than most species had existed. They had perfected warfare down to a precise science. But science required repeatable results, and the humans, it seemed, specialized in being unrepeatable. 3 stealth ships slipped through the boundary of human territory like shadows through water. Captain Orlan commanded the lead vessel, his crew hand-picked from the Empire's best reconnaissance division. They had orders to observe without being detected, to catalog without interfering, and above all, to report everything they saw at the human orbital construction platforms. Orlan had expected to find primitive facilities. The humans had only achieved reliable space travel within living memory. Their technology was borrowed, stolen, or reverse-engineered from crashed vessels of other species. Every intelligence brief reinforced the same conclusion. Humanity was playing catch-up in a galaxy that had moved past them millennia ago. The reality proved far more unsettling. Human shipyards orbited their home world in a loose constellation of platforms that seemed to defy any organizational logic. Each platform was different. Some were massive frameworks of exposed girders and scaffolding. Others were enclosed spheres covered in what looked like random additions and modifications. Cargo vessels moved between them in patterns that made Orlan's navigation officer visibly uncomfortable. There was no traffic control, no designated lanes, no order whatsoever. Ships simply went where they needed to go and somehow avoided collision. "Tactical, are you recording all of this?" Orlan asked. "Yes, sir, though I am not certain what I am recording. This does not match any known construction methodology." Orlan moved his ship closer to the largest platform, the one their intelligence suggested was building the new warship. What he saw made him signal for a full stop. His crew gathered around the observation displays, staring in collective confusion. The warship was there. It was actually taking shape in the vacuum between 4 different construction frames. But the way it was being built violated every principle of ship construction the Empire had established. The humans were not following any blueprint in sequence. Different teams worked on different sections simultaneously with no apparent coordination. One group was installing weapon systems, while another section still had its hull plating incomplete. A third team was testing thruster configurations on a portion of the ship that did not even have power routing finished. "This is chaos," Lieutenant Parnes said from the sensor station. "How can they possibly build anything this way?" "I do not know," Orlan admitted. He zoomed in on one section where human workers in bulky environmental suits were assembling hull panels. The panels themselves were not uniform. Each one appeared to be slightly different, made from varying materials with different structural patterns. "Are they improvising the design as they go?" The tactical officer brought up thermal imaging. "Sir, look at this. The construction equipment. They are using industrial printers on a massive scale. They are literally growing sections of the ship in real time." Orlan watched as enormous nozzles sprayed what looked like metallic foam onto a framework. The foam solidified into complex geometric patterns, forming structures that would have taken Empire fabrication facilities weeks to produce. But more disturbing was what happened next. Human engineers would examine the newly formed sections, then deliberately break pieces off and remake them. Over and over, testing to failure, then rebuilding stronger. "They are treating ship construction like an experiment," Orlan murmured. "Each section is a prototype." "Sir, incoming transmission from Dr. Kelly's on the secure channel." Orlan activated the communication link. The Empire's lead materials scientist appeared on his display, looking haggard and frustrated. "Captain, I have reviewed your reconnaissance data from the past 2 days. I need you to get closer to their primary hull assembly. I need detailed scans of the armor plating composition." "That will increase our detection risk, Doctor." "I am aware. Do it anyway. What I am seeing in your current scans should not be physically possible, but I need confirmation." Orlan maneuvered his ship into a higher risk position, close enough to the human construction zone that he could see individual workers through the windows of their vessels. His sensors went to maximum resolution, penetrating through the outer layers of the growing warship. The data that came back made Dr. Kelly's go silent for nearly a full minute. "Doctor," Orlan prompted, "the armor is not armor as we understand it. It is a matrix, a living system of interlocking materials that can reconfigure based on incoming damage. Captain, the humans have created adaptive matter, not programmed responses, true adaptation." "How is that possible?" "I have no idea. It should take quantum computers to manage this level of molecular coordination, but I am not detecting any central processing system. The matter itself is making decisions." Orlan watched another section of hull being installed. Human workers moved with casual confidence, unbothered by the fact that they were building something that should not exist. "Doctor, they are working fast. At current pace, this ship will be complete in less than 1 solar cycle." "Impossible. A vessel of this size should require 5 cycles minimum, even with optimal construction conditions." "Tell that to the humans. They are not following optimal conditions. They are following whatever works." Orlan highlighted a section where workers had just installed a power unit, torn it out again, modified it, and reinstalled it all within an hour. "They iterate constantly. No design is final until the moment they seal it." Dr. Kelly's looked like he wanted to argue, but the evidence was streaming across his screens in real time. "Captain, I need you to stay on station. The High Commander needs to see this. All of it." Orlan settled in for a long observation mission. Over the next weeks, he watched the impossible ship take form. The humans worked around the clock in rotating shifts. When problems arose, they did not consult with central planning or wait for approval. They just fixed it and moved on. Sections that failed stress tests were rebuilt immediately with new configurations. No 2 parts of the ship were identical because no 2 parts had the same construction history. On the day the humans sealed the final hull plate, Orlan sent his report to High Commander Vranes with a simple conclusion. The humans had not just built the ship from the blueprints. They had improved it during construction. Every flaw they found became a lesson. Every test that failed made the next version stronger. The ship was not perfect by Imperial standards. It was covered in mismatched sections, irregular plating and systems that would horrify any proper military inspector. But it was complete, and it was ready for trials. The humans had named it Defiance. Orlan thought that name was more appropriate than they probably intended. This ship defied everything the Empire knew about engineering, construction, and design philosophy. It should not work, but somehow, Orlan suspected it would work better than anything the Empire could build. News of the Defiance trials spread through human communication networks with the kind of enthusiasm that made Imperial observers deeply uncomfortable. Humans treated their first indigenous warship like a sporting event. Civilian vessels gathered at safe distances around Jupiter's orbit to watch. Entertainment broadcasts sold advertising time. Children on Earth wore replica crew uniforms to school. The entire species seemed to view this as entertainment rather than military development. High Commander Vranes watched the gathering crowd through Orlan's reconnaissance feeds with growing unease. They are broadcasting this publicly. Yes, Commander, Orlan replied from his concealed position. They have invited representatives from 17 different species, including some of our client states. This is a weapons demonstration, not a parade. The humans do not appear to see the difference. The Defiance emerged from its construction dock without ceremony. It was an ugly ship by Imperial standards. The hull looked like someone had grafted parts from a dozen different vessels together. Armor plating shifted color and texture across its surface in irregular patterns. Weapon ports were asymmetrically placed. Even the thruster configurations looked wrong, mounted at angles that violated efficient force distribution principles. Captain Roy Bennett commanded the vessel. Imperial intelligence had a thick file on him. Former commercial freight hauler. No military training. No formal education in tactics or strategy. He had learned ship operation the hard way, running cargo through dangerous sectors where pirates were common. Exactly the kind of person who should not be in charge of an experimental warship. Bennett's voice came through on the open broadcast channel, casual and relaxed. All right, folks, we are going to run through some basic functionality tests today. Nothing fancy. Just want to see if this bucket holds together when we push it around. Vranes felt his throat sax tighten. The man was commanding a vessel that represented revolutionary technology, and he talked about it like it was a used cargo hauler. The first test began without warning. Defiance opened fire on a series of target drones with conventional plasma cannons. The shots were accurate but unremarkable, standard military performance. Then the targets returned fire. The first volley hit Defiance's starboard hull. Imperial sensors recorded the impact energy and compared it to expected damage. The ship should have taken scoring damage to its outer armor plates. Instead, the armor rippled like water, dispersing the energy across a wide area. By the time the second volley arrived, the armor had shifted its molecular structure. The impacts barely registered. Analyze that, Vranes ordered. His science team was already working. Sir, the armor adapted to the weapon frequency within 3 seconds of initial contact. It is now optimized against that specific energy signature. Change the target weapon frequencies, randomize them. The test continued. Each time the drones switched to different weapons, the Defiance's armor took 1 or 2 hits before adapting. The ship's hull was learning in real time. After 10 minutes of sustained fire, the drones could barely scratch the warship's exterior. Then Bennett did something that made every Imperial observer freeze in shock. He deliberately shut down sections of his ship's armor. We need to test damage response, Bennett explained to his audience as if this was perfectly normal. Can't do that without taking some actual damage. The next volley punched through the deactivated armor sections and breached 3 hull compartments. Alarms screamed across the Defiance's systems. Imperial protocols would have called for immediate withdrawal and emergency repairs. Instead, the human crew treated it like a training drill. Automated systems sealed the breached sections within seconds. Repair drones swarmed the damaged areas. Backup power systems activated before the primary ones had fully failed. Within 5 minutes, the ship had restored basic functionality. Within 15, the hull breaches were patched and the crew was running diagnostics on the repair quality. "This is insane," Lieutenant Parnes said from the sensor station. "They are deliberately breaking their own ship." "They are testing their damage control systems," Orlin corrected, "and their systems are very good." The trials continued through the day. The Defiance performed maneuvers that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. It accelerated like a fighter craft, then stopped and reversed direction in ways that should have torn the hull apart. The distributed power system meant that losing propulsion in one section did not cripple overall movement. The ship could fly on partial thrust, rotate on unbalanced vectors, and still maintain combat effectiveness. Then came the demonstration that made Vranes realize the humans had built something truly dangerous. Bennett ordered his crew to simulate a catastrophic reactor containment failure. Not an actual failure, a simulation, except the simulation was so realistic that it involved actually venting one of the ship's reactor cores into space and running on backup power. "They are ejecting a functioning reactor," Vranes said, disbelief clear in his voice. "That represents millions of credits worth of equipment." "They are proving the ship can survive worst-case scenarios," Orlin replied. "Watch." The Defiance operated on 75% power for the next hour. Combat systems remained online. Life support never wavered. The ship could still fight, still maneuver, still pose a threat. Then the crew retrieved the ejected reactor, reinstalled it, and brought it back online. The entire operation took less time than an Imperial crew needed for routine maintenance. When the trials finally ended, Bennett made a closing statement that sent ripples of concern through the Imperial High Council when they reviewed the footage. "Thanks everyone for watching. We found about 200 things that need improvement, so we will be going back to the yard for modifications. Should have an updated version ready in about 3 weeks." 3 weeks. The humans were going to tear apart their revolutionary warship and rebuild it in 3 weeks. The Empire would need 3 cycles just to complete the inspection reports. Vranes watched Defiance return to dock, already seeing teams swarming over its hull with cutting tools and welding equipment. The humans were not done building. They were never done building. Each iteration taught them something new. Each failure made them stronger. "Prepare a full report for the Council," Vranes ordered. "Include everything. They need to understand what we are dealing with." "What are we dealing with, Commander?" Orlin asked. Vranes was quiet for a long moment. "A species that builds ships expecting them to break, and then builds them so they cannot stay broken." The Imperial War Council convened in the Grand Strategic Hall, a chamber that had hosted deliberations for 50,000 years. Fleet Admiral Keston stood at the center of the holographic display, surrounded by the council members whose collective experience spanned multiple species' lifetimes. He had prepared his presentation for 3 weeks, running combat simulations through the Empire's most advanced tactical computers. The results were clear and decisive. In every scenario, Imperial forces crushed human resistance within days. "The humans currently operate 17 warships of the Defiance class," Keston began, manipulating the holographic display to show human fleet positions. "Each one is unique in design, which creates logistics problems for their maintenance and supply chains. We have cataloged 273 design variations across their fleet. This lack of standardization is a critical weakness." Council member Thross, a veteran of the Outer Rim campaigns, gestured at the display. What are their tactical capabilities? Impressive in isolation, concerning in aggregate. Each ship demonstrates remarkable damage resistance and adaptive systems. However, they lack coordination. Human command structures are decentralized. Individual captains have broad autonomy. In fleet actions, this creates confusion and conflicting objectives. Vranny sat in the observer section, listening with growing frustration. Keston was analyzing humans using imperial doctrine. It was like trying to understand water by studying rocks. The presentation continued. Keston showed engagement simulations where imperial fleets, with their perfect formations and coordinated fire patterns, systematically destroyed human vessels. The computers gave the Empire victory after victory. Overwhelming firepower combined with numerical superiority. The mathematics were simple. Based on these projections, a demonstration fleet of 50 vessels should be sufficient to convince the humans to accept imperial oversight of their military development, Keston concluded. We can achieve compliance without significant casualties on either side. And if they refuse to comply, asked Council Member Vresh. Then we escalate, but I do not believe it will come to that. The humans are rational enough to recognize when they are outmatched. Vrannies could not stay silent any longer. Admiral, your simulations assume human commanders will follow predictable tactical doctrine. What if they do not? Keston smiled with the patience of someone addressing a slow student. Commander Vrannies, all species follow predictable patterns in warfare. It is a matter of resources, positioning, and firepower. These are universal constants. The humans may have interesting technology, but they cannot rewrite the fundamental laws of combat. They rewrote the fundamental laws of material science, Vrannies countered, and engineering, and construction methodology. Why assume they will follow our rules in combat? Because combat is different. You cannot improvise tactics against a superior force and expect survival. The humans have no military tradition. They have been in space for barely 3 generations. They cannot possibly have developed strategic depth. Vranny stood, his ceremonial armor clinking softly. The humans have been fighting wars on their home planet for their entire history, thousands of years of continuous conflict. They have military traditions we have never studied because we assumed they were irrelevant. The council murmured among themselves. Keston's expression hardened. Ground warfare and space combat are entirely different domains. Are they? The humans do not seem to think so. I have been reviewing their historical military archives. They have developed concepts we have no names for: asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, strategic depth through dispersal rather than concentration. They built their entire military philosophy around fighting enemies with superior numbers and technology. Which is why they will lose, Keston said firmly. Superior numbers and technology are how wars are won. Vrannies brought up his own data on the holographic display. The humans are sharing their ship designs, openly, with any species that asks. I have confirmed reports of 7 client states requesting access to human engineering protocols. Some have already begun modifying their own vessels using human adaptive armor concepts. This caused genuine concern among the council members. The Empire maintained order through technological superiority. If that advantage began to erode, the entire power structure became unstable. Council Member Thross leaned forward. Are you suggesting the humans pose a threat to imperial stability? I am suggesting we do not understand what we are dealing with. Look at this. Vrannies pulled up footage from Defiance's trials. They test their systems to destruction. They break their own equipment deliberately to find weaknesses. This is not how we operate. This is not how any species in the Empire operates, but it works. Keston dismissed the footage with a gesture. Interesting in controlled tests, useless in actual combat when ships are trying to kill you. Unless they designed those ships expecting to be damaged. unless their entire combat doctrine is built around taking punishment and adapting to it. Vrannies highlighted human crew responses during the simulated reactor failure. They practice catastrophic damage scenarios as routine drills. Their damage control teams are as well trained as our weapons teams. Maybe better. The council debated for another hour. In the end, they sided with Keston's position. The mathematics were too compelling. 50 Imperial warships against 17 human vessels. The outcome seemed inevitable. Vrannies left the chamber with a deep sense of unease. He found Orlan waiting in the corridor outside. "You heard?" Vrannies asked. "Yes, Commander. Admiral Keston has been given authorization to deploy the demonstration fleet to human territory. We are to make a show of force and demand compliance. He is going to get people killed, on both sides." Orlan hesitated before speaking. "Commander, I have been watching the humans for months now. They do not react to threats the way we expect. When we show strength, they show curiosity. When we make demands, they ask questions. And when we make assumptions about them, they prove us wrong." "I know. I have read your reports, all of them." Vrannies looked back at the council chamber doors. "But the Empire has maintained order for 50 millennia using these methods. We cannot change our entire strategic philosophy because one species does things differently. What if they are right and we are wrong?" Vrannies had no answer to that question, so he gave Orlan the only order that made sense. "Stay close to Keston's fleet. When things go wrong, and they will go wrong, I need you there to document what actually happens, not what the simulation said should happen." "Yes, Commander." As Orlan departed, Vrannies remained in the corridor. Somewhere in human territory, 17 odd warships continued their constant cycle of testing, breaking, and improving. And in 3 weeks, Keston would arrive with overwhelming force to teach them their place. The Admiral was so confident in his simulations that he had not considered a simple question. What if humans had run their own simulations and reached different conclusions? Admiral Keston's demonstration fleet arrived at the human colony of New Perth with the kind of precision that came from 50,000 years of military refinement. 50 Imperial warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of the local star. Each vessel was identical to its neighbor, built to exact specifications, armed with weapon systems that had conquered 1,000 worlds. 3 human ships waited for them in loose orbit around the colony, not in formation, not preparing defensive positions, just floating there like commercial vessels waiting for cargo. Keston opened a broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Fleet Admiral Keston of the Galactic Empire. By order of the Imperial High Council, all human military vessel construction is to cease immediately. You will submit your warship designs for Imperial review and approval. You have 1 standard hour to respond with your compliance." The response came in less than 5 minutes. Captain Roy Bennett's voice carried the same casual tone he had used during the trials. "Admiral Keston, we have received your message. We are reviewing your demands and will respond when we have consensus among our command structure. Please stand by." Stand by, as if Keston was a customer service representative waiting for a supervisor. "They are stalling," Keston's tactical officer said. "Let them, it changes nothing. Weapons, prepare a warning shot. Target the empty space 50 kilometers ahead of their lead vessel." The Imperial fleet opened fire with precision. Plasma bolts streaked through the void and detonated exactly where Keston had specified. A display of accuracy and power. The message was clear. "This is what we can do. Imagine what happens if we aim at you." The human ships began moving, not retreating, accelerating toward the Imperial fleet. "Sir, they are approaching our position." Keston frowned. "Tactical assessment." "Unknown, sir. This is not a standard attack formation. They are not even maintaining consistent spacing between vessels." The 3 human ships spread out, each taking a different vector. One went high, one low, one straight ahead. No coordination, no apparent strategy. Just 3 ships heading toward 50 with reckless abandon. "They cannot be serious," Keston muttered. "All ships defensive formation. Prepare to engage on my mark." The Imperial fleet shifted smoothly into combat configuration. A wall of overlapping shields and coordinated firing solutions. It was textbook perfect. A formation that had broken enemy fleets for millennia. The human ships opened fire first. Their weapons were not particularly powerful by Imperial standards. The shields absorbed the impacts easily. But Keston noticed something odd. The humans were not trying to penetrate the shields. They were testing them. Each shot came in at a different frequency, different energy signature, different approach angle. "Sir, they are scanning our defensive systems." "All ships return fire. Disable their propulsion. We will tow them back to Imperial space for proper evaluation." 50 Imperial warships opened fire in perfect synchronization. The amount of energy they released should have been overwhelming, should have crippled the human vessels in seconds. The human ships took the hits. Their adaptive armor rippled and shifted, absorbing what it could. But there was too much incoming fire. One human vessel lost its forward shields entirely. Hull breaches opened across its bow section. Atmosphere vented into space. The ship kept fighting. Keston watched in disbelief as the damaged human vessel sealed its breaches, rerouted power, and continued its approach using only aft thrusters. "What is their damage control response time?" "Under 30 seconds, sir. They have already restored combat effectiveness to that vessel." The battle developed in ways Keston's simulations had never predicted. The human ships did not try to win through superior firepower. They were learning. Every shot they took taught them how to defend against the next one. Their adaptive armor was adjusting to Imperial weapon frequencies in real time. After 5 minutes of sustained combat, the human shields were holding better than they had at the start. Tactical, increase weapon frequency variation. Do not let their systems stabilize on a single defense pattern. The order went out across the fleet. Imperial weapons began cycling through different energy signatures, but this created coordination problems. Ships that had been firing in perfect synchronization were now operating on independent frequencies. The wall of coordinated fire began to fragment. The humans pressed their advantage. One of their vessels, the one that had lost its bow section, suddenly accelerated directly at the Imperial flagship. Keston assumed it was a suicide run and ordered intercepting fire. But the human crew had already evacuated to the ship's heavily armored engineering section. The ship was on autopilot, reinforced hull heading straight for his vessel at maximum velocity. Evasive maneuvers. The flagship broke formation, its shields reinforcing against the impact. The human ship slammed into the shields with enough force to overload 3 primary projectors. Not enough to breach the hull, but enough to create a gap in the defensive network. And the other 2 human ships were already targeting that gap. Keston's tactical computer screamed warnings. His fleet was out of formation. Ships were trying to compensate for the flagship's maneuvers. The perfect coordination that had won 1,000 battles was dissolving into individual ships making independent decisions. Just like the humans fought. More human vessels appeared on sensors. 5 new ships, arriving from different vectors. These were not the same models as the first 3. These ships had been modified based on combat data transmitted in real time from the engaged vessels. They already knew Imperial shield frequencies. They already had countermeasures loaded. The new human ships opened fire with weapons specifically tuned to penetrate Imperial shields. Not every shot got through, but enough did to cause real damage. An Imperial cruiser lost its primary weapons array. Another took hits that knocked out its faster-than-light drive. A third vessel reported casualties in its crew quarters from a lucky shot that had penetrated deep into the ship. Sir, recommend we withdraw to regroup and reassess. Keston's pride warred with his tactical sense. This was supposed to be a demonstration of imperial power. Retreating from a numerically inferior force would send entirely the wrong message, but staying meant taking more losses for uncertain gain. All ships withdraw to rally point Beta. Maintain defensive formation during retreat. As the Imperial fleet pulled back, Keston watched the human vessels hold position. They were too damaged to pursue. Two of the original three ships were barely functional, held together by emergency patches and backup systems. But they were still combat capable, still dangerous. The humans had sacrificed those ships to learn how to fight the Empire. And they had transmitted everything they learned to the reinforcements. Each human loss made the next wave stronger. Keston finally understood what Vranes had been trying to tell the Council. The humans did not fight to win individual battles. They fought to learn how to win the war. The Imperial High Council met in emergency session for the first time in 300 years. Admiral Keston stood before them, his armor still scarred from the engagement at New Perth. 7 ships lost. 7 Imperial warships destroyed or rendered inoperable by a force 1/3 their size. The mathematics that had seemed so certain now looked like wishful thinking. High Commander Vranes presented the analysis that no one wanted to hear, but everyone needed to understand. The humans do not build ships to last forever, Vranes began, his voice steady despite the gravity of what he was saying. They build ships knowing they will be damaged, knowing they will fail, and they design every system around that certainty. When we lose a ship, we lose capabilities, crew, resources. When humans lose a ship, they gain data. Council member Thross, who had supported the demonstration fleet, spoke quietly. They are treating warfare as research. Exactly. Every engagement teaches them something. Every loss makes their next generation stronger, and they share that information instantly across their entire fleet. We saw it at New Perth. The first 3 ships were sacrificial. They existed to learn our defensive systems. The ships that arrived afterward had already adapted. So we face an enemy that improves with each battle, said Council member Vresh. How do we counter that? That is the question, Vranes replied. Our tactical doctrine is based on maintaining technological superiority. We develop new weapons, perfect them over decades, deploy them with devastating effect. The humans develop new weapons, break them, fix them, and deploy better versions in weeks. We cannot outpace that development cycle. Keston cleared his throat. The Council turned to him, waiting for his assessment. He had commanded fleets for 2 centuries. He had never retreated from an inferior force before New Perth. The Council asked me to provide a military solution to the human problem, Keston said. I no longer believe a military solution exists, not one that serves the Empire's interests. We can still overwhelm them with numbers, but each battle will cost us more ships, more resources, more time, and each battle will make them stronger. Eventually, the cost will exceed the benefit. You are suggesting we negotiate. Thross sounded incredulous. I am suggesting we learn from them the way they learn from us. The humans did not defeat us through superior technology. They defeated us through superior adaptation. That is a skill, not a weapon, and skills can be taught. The Council debated through the night. Some members wanted to continue military pressure. Others suggested economic isolation. A few even proposed offering the humans full membership in the Empire to control their development from within. Vranes listened to all of it and recognized the fundamental misunderstanding still present. The Empire was trying to find a way to control the humans, to fit them into existing structures, to make them conform to 50,000 years of established order. Finally, Vranes stood and addressed the Council directly. We are approaching this wrong. The question is not how do we deal with humans. The question is what can we learn from them. For 50 millennia, we have perfected the art of building things that do not break. The humans have perfected the art of building things that cannot stay broken. Both approaches have value. Both approaches have applications. What if we combine them? You are suggesting cooperation, Council Member Vresh asked. I am suggesting survival. The galaxy is vast. The Empire controls only a fraction of it. We face threats at our borders constantly. Resources are finite. Technology plateaus. We have been operating the same way for so long that we have forgotten how to truly innovate. The humans innovate constantly because they have to. They are young, limited, desperate to prove themselves. That desperation creates creativity. That creativity creates solutions we would never conceive. The council was quiet for a long moment. Then Thros spoke. What would cooperation look like? A treaty, mutual technology sharing, joint construction projects. We teach them precision and efficiency. They teach us adaptability and rapid iteration. We build ships that combine imperial durability with human resilience. The humans would have to agree to this, Keston pointed out. They will, Vranis said with more confidence than he felt, because they did not want war in the first place. They just wanted to build things their own way. Give them that freedom and they will give us access to their methods. The council voted. It was not unanimous, but it was enough. 3 weeks later, Vranis and Captain Roy Bennett met at a neutral station to negotiate terms. Bennett arrived in a human shuttle that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts. Vranis came in an imperial diplomatic vessel that was older than Bennett's entire species had been spacefaring. They talked for 2 days. Bennett was surprisingly easy to work with once Vranis stopped trying to dictate terms and started proposing collaboration. The human captain had a simple philosophy: build what works, share what you learn, help who you can. The treaty they drafted was unlike any document in imperial history. It placed no restrictions on human development. It demanded no compliance with imperial standards. Instead, it proposed something radical: joint shipyards where imperial and human engineers would work side by side, shared research facilities, open exchange of techniques and methodologies. In return, the Empire would provide resources, materials, and access to technologies the humans lacked. The humans would provide their adaptive systems, their damage control expertise, and their unconventional approach to problem solving. The first joint project began construction 6 months later, a hybrid vessel that combined imperial power systems with human adaptive armor, imperial precision manufacturing with human iterative testing. It was not beautiful by either species standards, but it worked in ways that neither could achieve alone. Vranis visited the construction facility during the final assembly phase. He watched imperial engineers arguing with human workers about the proper way to install shield generators. The humans wanted to test them to failure first. The imperial team was horrified at the waste. They eventually compromised. Test some, install others, compare performance. Both sides learned something. Bennett found Vranis watching from the observation deck. You know what the difference is between your way and our way? The human captain asked. Tell me. You build things that should not break. We build things that should not stay broken. But together, we might actually build things that truly last. Vranis considered that. 50,000 years of imperial philosophy summarized and challenged in 3 sentences. But Bennett was right. The universe was harsh. Things broke. Empires fell. Species went extinct. The only constant was change. Maybe it was time the Empire remembered how to change with it. Your ship needs a name, Vranis said, looking at the hybrid vessel taking shape below them. We were thinking resolution, because it resolves the question of whether cooperation is possible. Resolution works. When can you teach my engineers your damage control techniques? Bennett smiled. Right now if you want, but I should warn you, we are going to break a lot of things in the process. Good, Vranis said. Breaking things is how you learn to fix them better.